Welcome into the Commanders Report. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today, the Washington Commanders have made two moves at the kicker position. Matt Gay is out and Jake Moody is in. I'll react to this signing, why I think it could be a brilliant move by Commanders GM Adam Peters at this point in the 2025 NFL season. Then I got my film takeaways. Actually, it wasn't complete garbage this week, all right? So some positive takeaways, some negative stuff as well on offense and defense that we'll talk about later in today's show, so make sure you guys stick around. But before we get into today's content, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. It's a free and easy way to help out the channel. And also, we are considering doing a Commanders mock draft this week. If you guys are interested in seeing which players I think would be good fits with the Washington Commanders with the picks that they currently have available, and you guys want to kind of kickstart our draft content here on the Commanders Report with a 3-8 record and essentially playoff hopes dead here in Commanders Nation, click that thumbs up icon, because if we get 500 likes on today's show, we are going to do a mock draft video later in the week. So if you guys want that style of content, make sure you click that thumbs up icon to kick off today's show. So the big news of the day just happened moments ago, actually. The Washington Commanders have released kicker Matt Gay. That happened earlier in the day, and then later in the day, they announced who the replacement was going to be, and that is going to be Jake Moody, and they're going to be poaching him off of the Bears practice squad. And, of course, because you're poaching him off of another team's practice squad, you have to add him to your active roster. So that is the two moves that the Washington Commanders are executing here. I think it was probably the right move. Matt Gay was not getting the job done. His make rate and his field goal made percentage, outside of 50 yards was just absolutely abysmal. And he was good enough on extra points and good enough inside the 50, but still not good enough. And the modern-day NFL kicker has to be able to make it from over 50 yards. All right, I know that is maybe unfair because most people can't hit a 50-yard field goal, right? But these guys are professionals. It's what they get paid to do. And, frankly, Matt Gay had just had too many misses and too much inconsistency this year to continue on. But I am pretty excited to see what Jake Moody is going to be able to bring to the Washington Commanders on special teams for the rest of this season. If you'll remember, he hit the game-winning kick against the Washington Commanders on Monday Night Football to kickstart this losing streak that we are currently on. But he's still only 25 years old. He was a former third-round pick back during Adam Peters' final season there with John Lynch as the assistant GM of the 49ers, who ended up taking Moody 99th overall. So they really felt good and really great, honestly, about Moody's leg. He's got a really big leg. Of course, he's still only 25 years old, so he still could have a pretty long runway. And now throughout his career, he hasn't been fantastic. He did get released by the San Francisco 49ers earlier this year, did get picked up by the Bears. He's got a 76% field goal make percentage, and he is 9 for 12 this season. He went 8 for 9 when kicking for the Chicago Bears. And, the thing that I like about this move, guys, is that Moody could be a potential long-term option for the Washington Commanders. And as I discussed in my takeaways video yesterday, everything moving forward for the Washington Commanders for the rest of the season is about the future. And Jake Moody certainly has a better chance, in my opinion, to be the long-term answer at kicker for the Washington Commanders than Matt Gay had. All right, I think we all knew Matt Gay was not going to be coming back for the 2026 season and beyond. But Jake Moody is somebody that's a younger player with a really big leg, a good enough leg where he was taken in the top 100 of the NFL draft by Adam Peters just 2 off seasons ago. So certainly I think that this is something that could help the kicker situation and could potentially be a solution to the kicker situation that we have had here in Washington for, frankly, the last 2 years. But now let's move over to the Madrid game that happened yesterday morning, and I was able to watch the film this afternoon. And, I think that it was more positive than maybe the loss would indicate. Obviously, it's a game that you probably should have won. Multiple big mistakes, special teams kicks missing with Matt Gay, and then, of course, special teams mistakes in terms of Mike Samerstill kind of muffing a punt really put the nails in the coffin for the Commanders in this ball game. But let's start with the offense, because I do think that Marcus Mariota had a pretty decent game. Now, obviously, I know what you're going to say, well, Jack, in overtime, he threw the interception. It's absolutely right. That was one of his worst reps of the entire game. Picked a terrible time to have it. But generally speaking, man, I think Mariota is actually playing pretty darn good ball right now, especially considering the fact that he's playing without Terry McLaurin, all right? Like, Terry is just such an important piece. to this offense, guys. He is your vertical threat. He is your premier route runner. He is your premier ball winner. He is everything for this passing game. And having a guy like that, that true alpha number one receiver, means everything for a wide receiver room, especially when you don't have anybody even close to the level of ability that Terry McLaurin brings to the table. Deebo Samuel, not nearly the route runner. He's a pretty decent gadget guy. We'll talk about Deebo here in just a second, but then you have a hodgepodge of different players, a lot of players coming in, out of the lineup. So the fact that Marcus Mariota has been able to be as efficient and as good as he has been, despite the lack of receiving talent that he has had to work with this year in Washington, I think has been pretty darn impressive. And yeah, he did throw that unfortunate interception in overtime yesterday, but I think generally speaking, Mariota is playing pretty well. And when we get Terry back, guys, I think that this offense can begin to open up. All right, once Terry, once you put that legitimate deep threat back in this offense, that's going to open stuff up underneath for guys like Zach Ertz and Deebo Samuel and the run game and all this different stuff. So I think Terry McLaurin really is the linchpin that makes this Commanders offense and really the weaponry for this offense go. And I think that we've really felt the impacts of Terry McLaurin not being on the field this season, especially over this 6-game losing skid. So true or false? Let me know down there in the comment section. Marcus Mariota is a top 25 NFL quarterback right now. All right, type T if you think that statement is true, or type F if you think that statement is false. Honestly, I would think about typing T personally, because I think Mariota is a starter quality backup, kind of a replacement level guy, but especially when he's got his weapons, he can put up some big numbers. So this will be the pinned comment on today's show. YouTube's going to throw an ad break here in just a couple of seconds, and when that happens, take advantage of that time. But letting me know if you think Marcus Mariota is a top 25 quarterback in the National Football League. All right, so now let's get to Deebo Samuel. And the thing that I liked about Kliff Kingsbury's game plan this week is that he let Deebo be Deebo. And, Deebo frankly looked healthier than he looked at any point during over the last probably the last month. And, of course, that resulted in, a first down average there of 10.6 yards per reception, 74 total yards and a touchdown. And a lot of that came on screens, and a lot of that came on underneath stuff, and it came on the stuff that Deebo Samuel was really, really freaking good at. And he had that explosiveness back. He had that power back where he was able to run over somebody to get into the end zone for that touchdown. Certainly Deebo's been dealing with that heel issue over the last month or so, and you can tell that he's already not the fastest guy in the world, and you could tell that he was dealing with some pain just fighting through it, because this team is already dealing with so many injuries at the wide receiver position. He didn't want to let the team down by sitting out, but I think this week in Madrid, he finally looked like himself again, and with Terry McLaurin potentially getting back after the bye, I mean, getting these two guys playing together again could mean really good things for the Washington Commanders offense, especially if Mariota is going to continue to play as efficiently as he has played over the last several weeks here since Jaden Daniels got injured. Certainly Mariota's had quite an extensive period of time where he's been allowed to play for this offense. And I think once you get Terry and once you get Deebo back on the same offense consistently, I think this offense is going to really start to look like itself again. Now, the final offensive film takeaway that I have for you guys today, we got quite a few defensive takeaways today, but they started introducing some jumbo personnel packages where they put a sixth offensive lineman out there on early downs, and I thought it was a really nice wrinkle from offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury. And the offensive lineman that they brought in, the extra guy, was Brandon Coleman, and I actually really like that role for Coleman as somebody that maybe isn't good enough to start at left guard over Chris Paul. He's not good enough at left tackle to start over Laramie Tunsil, but as a sixth offensive lineman, I thought he really gave this run game a winning edge, and you saw that in the numbers that Chris Rodriguez Jr. was able to get as the lead back for the Commanders in this ballgame. 79 yards on 15 carries. Certainly was able to move the football on the ground. That is more than what this Commanders offense has been able to say over the last kind of previous month, because teams have just been stacking boxes because they're not afraid of the pass game. They were still stacking boxes in this game, the Miami Dolphins were, but it didn't matter because you had that hulking presence of Brandon Coleman, that sixth offensive lineman, to open up some more rushing lanes for Chris Rodriguez Jr. So coming up next here on the Commanders Report, my defensive takeaways. It was the first game of the year where head coach Dan Quinn called the plays for the Burgundy and Gold. I've got my thoughts after watching the film today coming up here in just a second, but first let's have word from our sponsor today at Harry's. And I don't have to tell you guys that maneuvering the men's razor space these these days is a bit of a nightmare, all right? The quality products are always super expensive, and then to refill those products, it's always really expensive as well. Then when you try and save a little bit of money, you get stuck with really dull razors that you can maybe use once and irritate your skin. That's exactly why I switched to Harry's Plus, and I haven't looked back since. Harry's Plus has an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face, refined blade tech for a closer, smoother shave, and a weighted metal handle, which is the heaviest Harry's has ever had for added control and comfort. But I think the best part about Harry's Plus is how affordable it is. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany, which means no outsourcing, no middlemen, and because they control every step of the process, from steel to shelf, they keep costs low and pass the savings on to you, the customer. And if you don't love your shave, Harry's will make it right, no questions asked. Their risk-free trial means there's zero downside to giving them a shot. And just to show you guys that I actually use and love this product, I use Harry's products in my bathroom every single day. You guys can see my Harry's Plus razor right here. Absolutely love it. The refills are affordable. I really like the weighted handle of the metal handle. They have plastic options as well, but personally, guys, I like the extra weight on there. It just gives that little bit of a premium feel to your shaving experience, and also their German-engineered blades give you a barbershop quality shave every single time. So for a limited time only, our listeners get Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/chat. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, one refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head on over to harrys.com/chat to claim this offer, and after your purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. A big thank you to Harry's for sponsoring today's edition of the Commanders Report. Now shifting over to the defensive side of the ball here, where I thought Dan Quinn calling the plays and the creativity that he brought to the table this week with all kind of the exotic blitzes. He did some corner blitzes that were really cool this week. He mixed things up in terms of post-snap rotations. I thought the creativity popped off the TV screen when I watched back the game today on film. So big shout out to Dan Quinn. Much better game plan than anything Joe Witt Jr. has trotted out there this season, in my opinion. And Dan Quinn's chops as a defensive coordinator, one of the best in this game over the last several years, back there in his time with Dallas and in Seattle, really showed up. And I really thought that he made the most out of what, let's face it, is pretty slim pickings here with the Washington Commanders in terms of their defensive personnel. But then I thought Mike Sainristil played really well on the outside, and I think that he is a potential candidate to be this team's future CB2. And, they've tried him at nickel, and I just think that in the modern NFL, you have to bring a level of physicality to your game if you're going to be a starting slot corner. And Mike Sainristil just doesn't really bring that. I also think that, he's just not the best in man-to-man coverage head up in the slot. I think he's much better when he's allowed to play off coverage, in zone, on the outside. And when the Commanders have done that, and they did that a lot more this week, where they've allowed Mike Sainristil to kind of play his game, he's really good, man. Now, he did drop an interception through a ball into double coverage that Mike could have brought down, and he didn't. And then, maybe let's just keep him off a punt return. Maybe that's a good idea. But, I think that Mike can be a future solution at CB2. I think we all agree that Trey Amos is going to be this team's long-term number 1 option on the outside. But hopefully Sainristil can prove for the rest of this season, and he had a good start against the Dolphins this week, that he can be that number 2 guy on the outside. And maybe you didn't have to completely waste a draft pick by taking him as early as you did. But then, going into next offseason, I thought, Jonathan Jones played another pretty decent game in this one as well. Now, he's not perfect, and, he's certainly getting older, but if you want to bring him back on another kind of, contract like you had him on this year, where it's not the biggest contract, it's just like a hardy veteran type of contract to be like a CB3 or a depth piece next year, in case Mike Sainristil falls off a cliff or Trey Amos gets injured again, to have a guy that you trust in this defense, and Jonathan Jones, that could be a real luxury that probably won't cost you all that much against the cap next offseason. So I think Jones has played pretty well, specifically when he's played on the outside this year. And honestly, Jones and Sainristil on the outside in this game, looked about as good as any cornerback tandem for the Commanders has looked all season long, and that's going up against guys like Jalen Waddle, who's an explosive playmaker. So really liked what I saw from the outside corners in this game, and I thought Dan Quinn's game plan accentuated their strengths. Then on the defensive trench, I thought Eddie Goldman stood out to me, man. He had a big stop at the goal line in this game. He made multiple TFLs happen, and, he's a big body. He's a true nose tackle, and he has been a pleasant surprise this year, all right? I would also say the same thing about Javon Kinlaw. Even though Javon didn't have his best game yesterday, in my opinion, I thought he was a lot more inconsistent. Goldman was the guy that consistently stood out to me, specifically in run defense, and to have a guy like that on early downs that can control the line of scrimmage is really, really big for this Washington Commanders defense. I expect him to get a very heavy role as we get towards the end of this year on early downs. Then Jordan McGee at the off-ball linebacker position continues to show promise, and he continues to show the thing that we haven't seen from guys like Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner all throughout this season, which is the ability to go sideline to sideline with his speed and with his instincts and then make tackles out in space. He made multiple in this game against guys like Devon Achane, who is not easy to bring it down in the open field. Same thing with Jalen Waddle. McGee was all over the place in this game, and he's not perfect, guys. He's out of position in zone coverage at times. Sometimes he's not the best in man coverage, and sometimes he's out of his run fit, but he's somebody with a lot of promise physically, and he's getting better week in and week out. So I'm liking what I'm seeing from Jordan McGee, hoping to see more growth from him as the season goes on. But, guys, I'm just so done with Bobby Wagner and Quan Martin. I mean, I know Bobby Wagner made a really nice play, and I know that's what you're saying at home. But, Jack, he made that awesome play on the fourth down for the goal line stand. And it was an awesome play, all right? It was one of those veteran type of plays that Bobby Wagner is still capable of making. He read the eyes of the quarterback. He anticipated that Waddle was coming in behind him, and then he dove and made a nice play on the football. That's great. How does that make up for all the times he was out of position in the run game? How does that make up for the lack of speed and the change of direction ability and the complete liability he has been in pass coverage this year in both zone and man? I mean, it's just not consistent enough. He can make the occasional play. He's a decent run defender when the Commanders defense forces opposing running backs inside. He can tackle fine, but it's just he's a liability out there, man, in both phases. He can't go sideline to sideline. If you can't set the edge, I mean, the perimeter is just going to be free pickings. We saw that with Devon Achane in this game. So until Bobby Wagner is off the field, this Commanders defense will continue to have a giant liability on it. But with the season pretty much over already, I guess you could just keep him out there at this point. And then Quan Martin, man, I think he's probably been a bottom 3 starting safety in the National Football League this year. I really have a hard time thinking of guys that have been as bad as he has been at that free safety position in the National Football League this year that haven't already been replaced. He takes terrible angles in run defense. He's a terrible tackler. He tries to, take terrible angles and then dive at the legs, and then he just misses. I mean, it's just not good stuff. I thought he was better in coverage in this game. I thought Dan Quinn did a decent job protecting his weaknesses in this game a little bit more, but he's just been a complete failure this season. I don't see him as a starting player in this defense long term, and I'm just so done with those two guys who have been giant holes in this Commanders defense this year. Now, another guy where, it might be Jover for, it's Jerzon Newton. And, obviously you spend an early second-round pick on him last offseason, and there's a lot of, expectations. There's a lot of people that had him as a top 20 player in the class. And, I don't really see anything on film for Newton more than just a rotational guy that comes in as pretty much a designated pass rusher on the interior. He is so bad as a run defender, guys. Driven backwards consistently, terrible pad level. It just doesn't look good. And even the pass rush is not consistent enough to really make him like a true pass rush specialist. So just not a whole lot of good stuff on film from Jerzon Newton. I mean, Eddie Goldman, who's ancient, is taking his snaps right now with Daron Payne out of the lineup for this football game. And now with Payne coming back, I just don't know how Newton gets on the field. So, it's definitely a tough situation. Certainly seems like that was a waste of a draft pick at this point. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he turns it around. But this was kind of his chance to really shine in this game, and he got out-snapped by Eddie Goldman. Then Preston Smith, another guy here where I just don't see any reason to keep him around. All right, I really don't. I mean, he has just been so bad this season. Can't set the edge, which is really what they brought him in to do. Can't rush the passer. Can't tackle. Can't do anything that you want him to do. He doesn't look in shape, frankly. And, I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can get out of some coming reinforcements for the Washington Commanders at this position. You signed DeMarcus Walker last week. He did not get any snaps on the defensive side of the ball this week, but he should be ramped up here soon. And then Drake Jackson, who was put on IR immediately after they signed him over a month ago, has been working his way back. He was back at practice last week, and now coming off the bye, it's very possible that we get both of these guys in the lineup, and I hope that means that we can finally part ways with Preston Smith, who I think, his NFL career is officially over. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Should Dan Quinn keep his play calling duties next season, or do you think he should find a new defensive coordinator to give those play calling duties to? Give me a yes or a no and your reasoning down there in the comment section. That'll be it for today's edition of the Commanders Report by Chat Sports. Thank you guys so much for talking some Commanders ball with me here today. We'll have more Commanders content for you guys tomorrow, so make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, guys, hail to the Commanders.